Tobias and Stephanie.
Thank you. I know many, if not most of you, are pretty worried about subscriptions and what has happened to those people who used to subscribe or do subscribe, and where are they going to go if they go. And also, churn is high up on your list of things that keep you up at night. So I'm happy to tell you that these two have found the Holy Grail.
Name is not
They
true.
know how they know how to keep retaining subscribers, and also they're signing up more. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Okay, today they're going to talk about subscriptions and whether they have a future, and if they don't, what is taking their place. I know Tobias has some really good insights here, and so we'll start off with him. He is Tobias Bennett, the VP of Revenue and Partnership at Local Media Consortium. Tobias?
Hi, Nina. Thank you. I don't know that I have good ideas.
Micro payments?
Well, yes. So, but let's start at the beginning, I think,
Okay.
to talk a little bit about why I think it's going to go where I think it's going to go.
Okay.
I'm going to do some math right now. This is going to be a really exciting way to get things started, so much so that I had to write it down. But let's start with a little basic math to establish a couple of things. Right? So we've got roughly 200 million U.S. households, all right? If 50% of those sign up for 2 new subscriptions a year at $9.99 a month, which is, I think we'll all admit, a wildly optimistic number, that translates to about $23 billion a year in revenue. Now, speaking from the newspaper industry specifically, in 2000 and 2005, those were the 2 high water years for revenue total in that industry. About $60 billion, roughly, in advertising and circulation revenue. 48.5 of that came from advertising, 11.5 of that came from circulation. In 2017, the advertising revenue was estimated at $16.5 billion. This is all from Pew. You can look it up and double check me if you'd like. And the circ revenue came in at around 11.2. So the best case scenario is subs generating $23 billion a year, and advertising will be optimistic and use the 2017 number of 16.6. That gets us to $39.6 billion, which is $20 billion below the high water marks that we ever saw. So you can look at the advertising piece and be really depressed, obviously, but if you look at the circ piece, things have been steady. Between 1998 and now, circulation revenue for newspapers across the whole country have been between $10 billion and $11.5 billion. So this screaming of we're all dying and it's subscription's fault and fixing that can save us, I think that's kind of a misnomer when you dig into those annual numbers. So the reason I say I see optimism, and the place I see optimism, is in some of the changing behavior that we can see in folks here in the U.S., and that's that, I guess it depends on how you look at it, but the relationship with news used to be something that was a very personal, local relationship. I grew up in Boston. The most present piece of branding my whole entire childhood was the Boston Globe. It was in every classroom. It was on every billboard, every street corner. That's gone from people's way of growing up, and their relationship with information and news has become, like a lot of our whole entire culture, really transactional. And so to count on these long-term relationships, I think, is maybe, while well-intentioned, maybe not thought out completely. And so long way to get to. I see a lot of promise in some emerging techs that are focusing on micropayments, different ways to get people to engage with publication in a transactional way. There's a few we can talk about in detail, but they are essentially hooking up to your Amazon wallet, your Google wallet, whatever it is that is your ubiquitous I pay for everything on the internet wallet, and trying to get to a place where we can charge on a story by story or feature by feature way a number that people are going to be willing to pay. So there is optimism there. Traditional approaches to subscription and thinking about it the way that we have always done I think is, while well-intentioned, maybe not the best use of everybody's time, because that number has been so steady for so long.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think those micropayments, you know, it kind of hurts when you're reading something and then you might have to pay. But on the other hand, how are these people going to stay in business? I mean,
Absolutely.
So I think, you know, readers have got to start to understand that. And I don't know, how do you get them to understand? You have any thoughts on that, Stephanie?
Oh, I was actually going back to the initial question. You know, I take a different approach where we have these readers, they're engaged with our magazine, we have information on them. I try to figure out what else we can create for them. So with our new membership program, it's not gated content. Actually, we don't have gated content. We created unique benefits within the membership program, unique and existing. One of the things is magazine access, so both online and in print. So within the membership program, you get magazine access online and print. You get online learning. You get downloadable project plans. You get a custom portal built for just members. And so our hope is that we can then upsell and downsell them through their life cycle to not lose them. So maybe they would not be interested in just the magazine anymore. Can we upsell them to this membership program, which has these other benefits? Or maybe if they've gotten to the end of their life in the membership program, can we save them before they cancel and downgrade them to something that's maybe just access to these project plans?
What are your thoughts on that, Tobias?
My thoughts on it are really smart, and I at times wish that I came up in an industry that was a little different than newspaper, because they in magazines in particular, you have these niche audiences.
Yeah.
And we're trying to, in our world, and we have a lot of broadcast members in our world as well, we're trying to cater to much more generalized audiences. And I think there are successes individually here and there. Some of my companies are in major metro markets, and they have done really good jobs in creating communities around, you know, their local sports teams. One of them is in the room. I don't know if Eric's here right now, but the folks at Belo have done an incredible job of capitalizing on their Dallas Cowboys audience, and it is a very, very meaningful effort for them. But those opportunities, I think, are not so ubiquitous across the whole entire newspaper and broadcast world. So I agree with you 100%, but selfishly, I don't know that it solves all the things I need to try and solve in my world.
Yeah, it is quite the conundrum here. Let's see, I lost my train of thought here. Now, you are also a photographer, right, Stephanie?
On the side. Yeah, not professionally in any way, shape, or form. I started my career as a graphic designer in the magazine business for a B2B restaurant magazine, and went into book publishing and then back into magazines and then into digital. So.
But you don't monetize that at all?
I do not monetize that
All
anymore.
right. I thought the photographs were very good.
Thank you.
And Tobias, you have a dog,
I do.
and it's a high-maintenance dog. Tell me about that.
Incredibly high maintenance. She cost me about $1,000 a month, but it's great coming home to her. I'm kidding. It's hyperbole.
Okay. All right. So I think at this point we're going to take questions, because we have two trains of thought here, and they're both very valid. And I'm sure you're all looking at both sides of this equation. And I wondered if anybody would like to ask one or both of them some further thoughts. Boy, nobody.
I wanted to follow up with Stephanie on online learning, because it's an area that really fascinates me, and a number of publishers have been getting into it. Can you tell us a little bit about whether you, again, to tie your two of your big points together, online learning and core audience. For your family handyman audience, is this, are you finding any new audience through this, or is this really plumbing and drilling into your existing core?
It's both. So, like I said, we diversified our options online. So we have the quick classes, which are low price, $15, easy barrier, very low barrier to entry. And then our core, we really focus on these high value, $150 premium sessions. We also rolled out a subscription model where you can get access just to all of the quick classes. With free trial, obviously. So the idea is, let's get in new people with this beginner content, more than just a one-time sale. Give them access to this recurring revenue solution, and try to grow and nurture them.
How are you distributing it internally? How are you using on your own properties? Are you learning lessons about where and when to advertise your own online learning proposition within your own content?
Yeah. So take a sort of a 360 approach. Obviously, dedicated dedicated promotional newsletters, emails. We're also in our weekly editorial newsletter. I run display ads on our websites. I also, obviously, we have paid media, and even in the print mags. So we really, and editorial content online. So we really try to get at every touch point. With this particular product, which is a little different than how we sell others, we realize when we're selling these courses, the marketing has to be very editorial in nature, which is very different than how we market subscriptions. It's not, hey, you get a free trial, 2 weeks free, save $10. We actually list out, here's exactly what you're gonna walk away with if you take this course and you're gonna learn these bullet points. And we found that editorial marketing works best for those products because you almost have to explain what the value is to the consumer.
Tobias, I wanted to ask you about micropayments at the local level, especially. Now, for a number of years, local was seen, at least in the industry, there was a lot of hope for that people put a lot of value on their local news, and this was one area where they were willing to pay. Could you tell us a little bit about how the local audiences have evolved in terms of what their willingness is to pay, where and why?
You know what? I have math for that.
Okay.
Hold on, give me a second.
We like math.
Yeah, so this is going to be information from an unnamed member company of mine, but I think it's pretty representative of what's going on out in the space. So this company that will not be named has roughly 50 million monthly uniques, okay? 2.5 million of those 50 million are subscribers. That's about 5% of their total audience. And you know, we hear numbers from the Washington Post and New York Times of 10% of our users are subscribing. I think they are edge cases in the general news world. 75% of the subscriptions that these folks have are bundled with print subscriptions, meaning a lot of these people don't even really know that they have this digital subscription. And only 50% of them ever actually log on. So 1.7% of your total monthly uniques are ever actually logged in general across a lot of these companies. And they're seeing roughly a 13-month churn. So that's where I think a lot of the nervousness comes in. I agree with you that there was a time where local news was in a place to have and capitalize on that relationship. But given the way things have gone economically, a lot of the moves towards centralization, a lot of the takeovers by hedge funds and things like that have taken place, they're gutting a lot of these newsrooms. And so the coverage in the individual communities where you could have these incredible relationships, the thing that would build those relationships is becoming fewer and farther between. They're relying a whole lot more on AP and things like that. So it's a multi-pronged challenge to maintain that relationship in the local communities. And I don't know that at this point anybody's found that, you know, secret sauce to doing it, except for a couple of places where a couple of billionaires have stepped up and said, my community absolutely needs this, and I don't care if it's going to lose money for me, I've got plenty. And they're able to kind of keep up their end of the bargain with that.
I think one of those examples would be the Day of New London.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You're also running into competition, I think, from a number of startups that are now starting to get traction. I mean, suddenly Patch, which we thought was long dead, is suddenly coming back into the market and having a presence. There's another one called, I think, is it Nextdoor Digital, which is sort of a social forum, a community forum for neighborhoods.
Absolutely. It's how I got to know my neighborhood.
So how are you thinking about how you take the lessons from those and absorb them and bring those into your business model?
So we've had folks, we do 2 conferences a year. I'll sell a little bit of what the LMC does, but we're kind of a best practices sharing organization for 90 different media companies, 3,000 different properties across the country. We bring our membership together twice a year, and the idea is to find these groups and these folks who are doing things the right way. Patch is actually about to be a member of ours, and we've had them at our conferences in the past to talk about how they're doing what they're doing. but their DNA is so different. It's more, they're coming there to be an aspirational, like a vision of, if we can get our house in order and we can truly make this digital transition, here's what we could possibly be capable of doing and how we could be operating. So yeah, there are successes out there, but they don't have legacy cost structures attached to them, and that is a real, very, very real consideration in our world.
I'm curious about live and events, because I've talked to some, and for both of you actually, because it seems like you're able to tap into an energy, in your case, Tobias, that local energy where there could be, and I've heard some newspaper chains that are actually moving towards using live events and cultivating live events to become a part of a presence in the neighborhood, but also the kind of energy that comes from online learning could be flipped into event strategies. Are either of you moving in that direction where you're trying to sort of move into live interactions with consumers?
It's certainly conversation we're having, especially as part of the membership program. One of the things we learned, members want to feel engaged with your brand. They want to feel like they're contributing. So we are considering what live events could that mean, even on a small scale, where we invite a very select few of our audience members who are VIPs to partake in our maybe editorial or content process or meet with our staff. So it's definitely conversation.
In our world, events have definitely grown as a piece of the revenue picture over the last few years, but I think probably a little different than the kind of events that they have. It's more a focus on community awards, best of type of things like that, that are trying to serve kind of as a community builder, but also as an advertising vehicle, kind of the hybrid model there. But yeah, there's definitely a push towards that. And then we've got some of our broadcast members who are doing really cool things. I know our friend John Conway was on stage a little earlier. RAL, now granted they have a very unique position as far as a media company goes in the landscape here in the country, kind of dominating a really large section of the state of North Carolina. But they're doing all kinds of cool stuff with high school sports and all kinds of really forward-looking types of opportunities. So it's certainly something that's coming to local media. You know, print companies are a little challenged occasionally when it comes to trying to create live video, but they're putting the effort in, they're making the investments, and they are trying to get there as well.
Stephanie, how's the online learning piece for Family Handyman being extrapolating across other brands, trusted media brands? Because in Family Handyman, I would imagine you've got maybe a freer and more open market there, but as you start moving into something like a Taste of Home brand, then you're going to be facing a lot more competition in the market.
A lot more competition.
Yeah.
When I started, there was a site, Taste of Home Cooking School online, that I ended up shutting down for that reason, mostly because we had to learn how to do it right first before we scaled. And it was too spread out. We needed to pick the audience that we thought had the most potential, figure out how to do it for them first. So ended up shutting Taste of Home Cooking School online, but that was one of the reasons. And it goes back to what you said before. There are so many cooking schools online. If you look at ATC, America's Test Kitchen, if you look at PANA, if you look at Salted TV. Also, there's ones that are funded by individuals because that's just what they want to do, and they have the money to do it. And with a publishing budget, sometimes you just can't compete with that. So now that we have found our legs with Family Handyman, now we're saying, okay, what else can we solve for our audiences? And maybe that is even Reader's Digest. We know that they are very excited about writing, and we know they're very excited about publishing. So is there a segment of that audience, and is it large enough that we can give them learning that helps them grow that part of their life?
Anything else? I can ask questions forever on this stuff, but anybody else have a question before we wrap? Nina, Tobias, Stephanie, thank you very much.
You got it.